this talk with a short Sanskrit prayer that's traditional before a Vedanta class. So let me just recite that and then I'll begin. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvinavadi Tamastu Ma Vidvashavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so what I hope to do is to introduce in this talk the 5 fundamental concepts of Advaita Vedanta. It is these 5 concepts that can serve as the tools that you can intellectually at least appreciate these concepts that are distinctive to Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta, and then with these tools you'd be able to proceed in your study. Nobody will become enlightened merely by knowing these 5 concepts, but unless these 5 concepts are clear, it'll be very difficult to understand this very subtle and profound philosophy. So I'm going to attempt to very briefly touch on the 5 concepts that everyone has to get into their toolbox. What I would suggest is to first understand exactly what Advaita means, non-duality, and then what does it mean Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta. Let me begin with that before I even hit the 5 concepts. Advaita means, or non-duality means, that reality other than which there's no second reality at all. In Sanskrit it says ekam advityam, one without a second. That's the absolute reality that Vedanta calls in Sanskrit Brahman. It means absolute truth, absolute reality, what truly is. And that absolute reality is absolutely non-dual. This is called non-dual Vedanta. Why is it called Vedanta? Is because this non-dual teaching has to be sourced back to the Upanishads. The word Vedanta means the Upanishads. Those philosophical texts that are found at the end of the Vedas. Anta means end. Veda is the whole corpus of the Vedic religion. And at the end of those Vedas is a section called the Upanishads. In those Upanishads we find this teaching, Sarvam Idam Brahmam. All this, in truth, is that one absolute non-dual reality alone. It says it very clearly. Naiha nanasti. There is no manyness here. He who sees manyness goes from death to death. I could cite many descriptions of this absolute reality that has no duality in it whatsoever. The 3 definitions of this non-dual reality is na svajati beda, na vijati beda, na svagati beda. This one reality, which is absolute infinite reality, there's nothing other than it that's the same as it. There's nothing other than it that's different from it. And the 3rd and final qualification is that this absolute reality, within it, within that reality, there's no multiplicity. There's no duality in it or outside of it. That's the radical nature of this non-dual, this concept. Not only do the Upanishads state that this is the absolute reality, which is bereft forever of all duality, that's all that ever was, right now, that's all that there is, and that's all that there ever will be. One reality, never changing, the only truth. That's called the Advaita of the Upanishads. It's a unique teaching. They call it the Asadharana Dharma. The unique teaching. Why is it unique? Because every teaching is unique. Buddhism is unique. Judaism is unique. So to say Vedanta is unique is trivial. If it's different than the other ones, it's unique. But the uniqueness of Vedanta is not that it's different merely from the other ones. The uniqueness consists in this fact, that if one were to study all of the philosophies within human thought, human history, whether it's mysticism, empiricism, rationalism, common sense, all theistic religions, all of them, if you examine closely, have accepted the truth of duality, at least in some sense. There's one absolute, and from that absolute all this has come. Some people speak like this. That's not Advaita Vedanta. Some people say there's one absolute reality, like a big cake, and all the parts are in that cake. Nothing's outside of it. Within that absolute, everything exists. But in Advaita Vedanta, nothing ever came out of it, and there's nothing existing in it. It's called Nirguna, without any qualities. Nirvishesha, without any distinctions. This is the Advaita that's taught in the Vedantas, the Upanishads. It's the unique teaching. Nobody else teaches this. And this teaching stems at least from the 6th, 7th century BC. Almost all scholars agree that the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad or the Chandogya Upanishad have to be dated 600 to 700 BC for a number of reasons. What that means is that this teaching about this non-dual reality was long before the Buddha came to teach Buddhism. It's more ancient than Buddhism. It's before Mahavira and Jainism, also about 500 BC. And it predates all the philosophies that came after that, and there are many. So, what is this ancient Indian philosophy? How can we study this? One important point to appreciate is that if Vedanta, the Upanishads, was saying there's just one reality without a second, that's fine, but what relevance does that have to me? So the second unique point, since nobody else believes in that there's only one non-dual reality, nobody has ever said that the self of everyone, who everyone is, who you are as individuals, in truth, you are that absolute reality. That there's only one reality and you are that. That's the second unique thing that no other religion, no other mysticism has ever taught, because no one ever believed in this one reality without a second. No one ever taught it. It was only in the Upanishads that this idea began. The third unique thing is, okay, there's this abstract idea of some absolute non-dual reality. And somehow they're saying that you are that reality. But it makes no sense, because I'm not non-dual. I'm in a world of duality. I'm a limited individual existing amongst so many other individuals. And so they may state that, but it's against everyone's common experience. Nobody feels that I'm timeless, without qualities, free from all duality. No one feels like that. So the third unique point of Vedanta is that the self that they're talking about is not the idea that we have about ourselves, but The true self is the witness of that idea. And everybody can verify that fact in their common experience. So with that as just as a general idea of what Advaita Vedanta has to say, let me begin with the 5 fundamental concepts. The first concept that has to be appreciated, and this is the most important concept, everything bases on this. The rest 4 other concepts are only relevant if we can appreciate this very subtle and profound idea that only Vedanta teaches. It's the concept of Atman, the concept of self. So, to elucidate exactly what this idea is of who is the true self, who are you really, I'll quote from a conversation that's found in a book called the Brahma Sutras, which illustrates this point, and then I'll expand on it somewhat. Shankaracharya, the greatest exponent of this philosophy of Advaita, an 8th century philosopher who was following an ancient tradition of other teachers right up to the time of the Upanishads. There was a tradition that was flowing down. Shankara was not the inventor of Advaita, the originator of Advaita, but he was one of the great expositors, systematizers, and therefore he's one of the great avenues in order to understand what do these Upanishads teach. No greater writer, we have no greater. All people after Shankaracharya were writing commentaries on what he had to say. Every Vedantin today, living today, they pay lip service. We follow Shankaracharya. So that's why I'm relating this conversation. In the Brahma Sutras he says, this self can only be known through understanding the teaching of Vedanta. There is no other way. So then an objector raises his hand and says, sir, I don't need the Upanishads to know myself. I know myself quite well. I am so-and-so. I am this. I am this body. I know myself. And not only do I know myself, I know what I'm related to. I know myself better than the Upanishads. How could you say I can only know myself through the Upanishads? This is the objection. So Shankara says, no, you don't understand. The self that's revealed in the Upanishads, only in the Upanishads, is not the I am so-and-so idea, but the witness of that idea. That in every human being, there is a witness that's witnessing every thought that's occurring to you, including the I thought. I am happy, I am sad, I am fat, I am thin, I was born, I'm getting old, I'm sick, I'm going to die. This idea is an object to a subject that is always present, never changing, ever self-evident. It doesn't need anything to light it up. That witnessing consciousness in everyone is the true self that's only known through the teaching of Vedanta. That's the real self. So let me say a few words about this witness. In Sanskrit, the word is called sakshi. Sakshi means sakshat akshaha, he who sees directly, without any senses. He sees without the eyes or the ears. He's directly lighting up the whole thing. That's called sakshat akshi. His eyes are direct. He doesn't need any senses. That's called sakshi, the witness. But you could take it as the subject. You could take it as the true knower. You could take it as the experiencer, the true experiencer. And on the other side, the thoughts, every thought, including the I thought, because that's just another thought that we have, All of those thoughts are objects. They're known. They're experienced. They're witnessed. So here we have a dichotomy between a subject and an object, a knower and a known, a seer and a seen. The true seer, the true witness that you can never lose, no matter what's happening, that's always there, that is called Atman. How many Atmans are there? We have to look at this witness. Not only is the witness in you the witness of every thought, including the I thought, it's the witness of every experience you have, of every state of experience you have. What that means is you're not just the witness of your thoughts, you're the witness of the whole waking state. That's also an object. It's witnessed. Sometimes the waking doesn't appear. Sometimes it's appearing. That means it's an object to you that's coming and going. When the waking state goes, a dream can appear. You're the same witness that was witnessing the previous thing. Now a whole new state is appearing, but the witness hasn't changed. What does that tell us? That the waking state in which all the relative reality is appearing, of real and unreal, time, space, causality, many people, gurus, students, scriptures, all of that is appearing to that one witness. Because the time and space is appearing to the witness in the waking, and because the time and the space of the dream is appearing to that same witness, the witness is not in time or space. Whether time appears or disappears, the witness is unaffected. That means the witness was never born. It doesn't get old, it doesn't get sick, and it doesn't die. Number one. Number two, there's not many witnesses, because it's the witness of space. Only if the witness was in space, we can say they were in juxtaposition, there's one witness, one. But it's the witness of space itself. There can only be one witness. That's why in Vedanta they say, Ekatma, one self, one witness. That witness in me, the witness in you, is only one witness. That's the unchanging reality. That's the non-dual reality. I'll come to explain why that witness is the only reality, that Advaita that I was talking, because right now we have two things. We have the witnessed and we have a witness. We've separated the idea that I have about myself, I am fat, I am so-and-so, I am thin, I am happy, and the witness. But that's also duality, so we'll have to address that. But the important point to know is that the true self in everyone is that non-dual reality. And when they say self, they mean the witness, not the ego, not the I concept. Obviously, this subject is quite foreign. We'd never think of ourselves that I'm a witness. I always think that I'm a knower. I know the world. I'm an enjoyer. I enjoy so many things in the world. And I'm a doer. I have a body. I do things. I drive my car. I walk. That's our idea. And nobody ever thinks for a minute, I'm that changeless, immortal, ever the same, witnessing consciousness. I'm going to leave it at that for the witness. That's the true self in Vedanta. If you don't understand that, you will not be able to read the Upanishads properly, read the commentaries properly. This must be very clear. The real self that they're talking about when they say you are that, they don't mean your body is that. They don't mean your senses are that. They mean that witness in you, that is, you are that. It's a statement of identity. It doesn't mean a statement of You will become that after you meditate. You'll become that after you drop dead. You'll become that if you raise your kundalini through your chakras. It's a statement of fact. You are that. That witness is the non-dual Brahman, that absolute reality. You don't have to do anything to become it. You don't have to make any effort to change yourself into that. By meditating on that, you won't become it. And therefore, nobody believes this, that I am the witness. Everybody says, I'm the witnessed. So now the second most fundamental concept of Advaita Vedanta, which is the concept of ignorance. In Sanskrit, that word is called avidya, ignorance. Vidya means knowledge. An absence of knowledge is called avidya, not knowing. What is this avidya? Forgetting about whatever the word ignorance might mean in any other philosophical system, be it Buddhism, Jainism, Kashmiri Shaivism, any Indian philosophy, or any Western philosophy for that matter, there's a very technical, specific meaning to the word ignorance. So let me try to give you the essence of what that actually entails. I just told you that according to Vedanta, everyone's real self is the witnessing consciousness. Unchanging, ever pure, ever free, never bound. But everybody says, I, the witness is I, am this. I am this ego. I am this body. I, the witness, am the witnessed. Even though I'm always the witness, even when I say, I am thin, I am heavy, I am fair, all of those ideas, even when I say it, and even though it doesn't change the witness in the least, that wrong idea that I am so-and-so, aham idam, I am this, mama idam, and this is mine, my house, my money, my wife, my children. This idea of I am this and this is mine is because I've mixed up my true self with something that I'm not. I've mixed up the subject with the object, and I've taken the qualities of the subject, the witness. What are the qualities of the witness? It's real. It exists. And it's pure consciousness. What is the nature of the witnessed? It's coming and going. It's appearing and disappearing. When it appears, it has to appear in the witness, to the witness. It can never appear independent of it. But the nature of the self, which is existence, consciousness, those qualities are superimposed on what's appearing. The body, which is just appearing in consciousness, I think it exists. That existence, in fact, is borrowed from the witness. The qualities of the witnessed, such as fairness or darkness or tall or short, all qualities of the body, I've taken to be myself. I've superimposed the object on the subject and the qualities of the subject on the object. This mutual mixing up of the self and the not self, Atman and Anatman, self and not self, as though they become absolutely one. It's kind of like if I were to take a glass of milk, one thing, and I were to take some water, and I poured it into the milk, and then I ask you, show me where's the milk, where's the water. They become one. How would you separate it? If I give you a fork, could you push the milk? They become so enmeshed that we take it as though there's just one thing there. But in fact, milk is not water and water is not milk. Short story. There was once a mythical swan that's called the Hamsa. He was the greatest of all the swans, a Paramahamsa. This Paramahamsa swan had a beak, magical beak. And with this beak, it is said, only he could take this milk and water, and with his beak he could take out the water and leave the milk. He could discriminate these two things and separate them, and he was called the Paramahamsa. You may have heard of certain sages that are called Paramahamsas, Paramahamsa Yogananda. There are other, it's an honorific, oh, here's the Paramahamsa. What does it mean? That this person has had the capacity that these two things would seem total. This is myself. The identification is so thick, it's like that milk and water. But the person who can discriminate, myself is the subject, this thing is an object, and they're absolutely different and opposed to each other in nature. They're as opposed to each other in nature as light and darkness. In fact, they can never be mixed up because they're absolutely opposed to each other. But nevertheless, because we haven't discriminated, we haven't been able to separate what is the subject, what is the object, everybody is naturally conducting themselves as I am this. This idea that I am this, which includes the I, the witness, and this, the witness, this wrong idea, it's just a misconception. Mithya pratyaya, Shankara says. It's just a false notion. And because of this false notion, every one of us is suffering. This is the cause of all suffering according to the Upanishads. That we've mixed up our true nature with something that we're not. And because of that, because I have a mind, even though the mind is object to me, I have a mind, I'm related to the mind, I can know things. Because I have senses, I take myself to be these senses, I can see things, hear things, taste things, smell things. I'm the smeller because I have a nose. I'm a taster, I have a tongue. This is what's called Lokika Vyavahara, common worldly experience of everyone, whether your IQ is 170 or you're a mental midget, it doesn't matter. Everybody has this idea. This is what's called ignorance. There's no other ignorance in Vedanta except this. The whole purpose of Vedanta is to remove this ignorance by showing us that in fact we did make a mistake. If we examine it, if we examine our own experience, we'll come to discover there was an indiscrimination. Even though I'm always the subject, I have in fact taken myself to be this object, to be somebody who's in the world, born, getting old, going to get sick, and dying. This is avidya. This subject of what exactly ignorance is, of course, can't be fully appreciated in a 5-10 minute explication of it. If anybody wants to really understand this, Shankaracharya, in his introduction to a work called the Brahma Sutras, has a work called the Adhyasa Bhashya, which literally means a commentary on how we've superimposed the subject on the object and the object on the subject. It goes into it in much greater detail with all the objections to that idea and all the responses to that idea. That's the best place to really get a deep idea of avidya. That's the second concept that we must know in order to really understand Vedanta, because Vedanta has no other purpose except to remove that ignorance. Let me move on to the third critical concept of Advaita non-dual Vedanta. Here, in Sanskrit it's called Vyavaharika Drishti, Paramarthika Drishti. Drishti means a viewpoint, and Vyavaharika means the worldly, the common, the universal viewpoint of the world. Lokika, worldly viewpoint. That's one drishti, one perspective of looking at things. There's another perspective. That drishti is called the Paramartha, the supreme, the absolute, the highest viewpoint. So there are these two viewpoints that we find in the Vedantic teachings. When they're talking about the Paramartha, the absolute highest viewpoint, they're talking what I was referring to in the beginning of this discussion, that there's only one reality. That's all that there ever was, is, or will be. There's no gurus, there's no students, there's no scriptures. Nobody was bound. Nobody needs to know the self, and nobody ever gets liberated by knowing the self. That is the highest truth. There's only Brahman. If anyone were to think that the highest truth is anything other than that, they wouldn't have understood the highest truth. So what's the relative truth? The common truth. The common truth is, I was born in this world, and I'm suffering, and I want to be happy. I'm searching for happiness everywhere, but whatever happiness I find it to be impermanent. It has a beginning, it comes to an end. And what I really want is to be happy forever. And not only just happy, if there's grades of happiness, I want to be infinitely happy forever. That's what I want. But it seems that it's not going to happen for a number of reasons. All the things that I get, I lose interest in them, or something takes it away from me. In any event, when I die, all my money, my children, my wife, my house, I'll have to leave it behind. So there's in the very happiness that we get in this world, it's tinged with a defect that it comes to an end. And I don't want my happiness to come to an end. So I'm seeking happiness. So then I don't know where to look, and I come across a Vedantic book. It says, you want to be happy? You have to know yourself. How will I know myself? It says, go to a teacher who can teach you about this Vedantic teaching, that your true self is the happiness you're searching. That self that I was describing as the absolute, if you have to put it in words, in truth, no word can describe this. If you have to put it in concepts, even though no concept can grasp this, the three words that are used merely to indicate it indirectly is Sat, Chit, Ananda. The true self, that witness in you, is called Sat. Existence, not worldly, lokika vyavahara. This plant exists in time, in space. It came at some time. It exists now. It will go. That type of existence, no. The witness who's the witness of time and space, which is not in time and space, that's the meaning of existence, Sat. The self is called Chit, but not in the empirical sense of that I'm aware of you. I'm aware of that. I'm aware of some object. but take away all the objects, and what remains, that consciousness bereft of any second thing, that's called chit. That's the sat, that's the chit. But the most important description of this, which is most relevant to us, because what we really want is happiness, the ananda, the bliss. The self is called bliss. Not the bliss that we get when we get an object that we desired. We call that sukha, happiness. But this is the bliss that's not caused by anything. It's not dependent on anything. It doesn't arise at some time, and after some time it'll be lost, because it's your very nature. The nature of non-duality, the absence of any second thing, in fact, is bliss. When there's no second thing, when there's no more experiencer, experienced, or experience, when all of that is absent, that's called ananda. That's the real ananda. It's the bliss of the self. It's hard to appreciate from the ego point of view how that could be bliss, because we always think that happiness will be something that's caused by something. How could it be that bliss is the absence of all duality, the peace that passeth all understanding? Your very nature is peace, bliss, happiness. In that self there's no desires, there's no fears, there's no feeling of limited. I'm a limited being. I want to be free, limitless. In the self there's no such thing as that, because the self is infinite and ever free. Nothing could bind it, because there's no second thing to it. That's the bliss, ananda. So in our ignorance, the happiness that we're seeking, in fact, we're already that. But because of the ignorance that I explained before, this worldly activity is taking place, and I'm seeking happiness. So Vedanta kindly says, sir, that happiness that you want, that immortality that you're seeking, that peace that you want, you're already that. But because of ignorance, you've not known that fact. The only way to know that fact is to get the correct knowledge of yourself and remove this ignorance. Therefore, whenever we're reading Vedantic texts and we read about you have to go to a guru, he will teach you the nature of the self. In order to understand that teaching, you must purify your mind, the mind that's naturally extrovert, that's running after the crumbs of life, trying to pick up a little happiness here, avoid some unhappiness. That extrovert mind that's natural for everyone. The teacher says, no, you must take that mind and turn it back to that witnessing consciousness, so that you can understand that that light that's in you is your true unchanging nature. All of that teaching is not the absolute truth. It's merely a device for the person who's in ignorance. The teacher is telling you, you must know yourself and get rid of the ignorance. But when the ignorance is gone, the self is realized to be, I never had any ignorance. In fact, my nature has always been free. I didn't need to get knowledge to become free. I never had any ignorance that had to be removed from knowledge. That's called the absolute point of view. So when we're reading Vedanta, it's critical to know when are the texts and the teacher talking from the relative, and when are they talking from the absolute. If these two viewpoints are mixed up, you will not be able to understand Vedanta or the commentaries. There is an absolute view, relative you. In the relative, there are students and teachers and scriptures and spiritual practices that are absolutely necessary, because until the ignorance is gone, all of this is absolutely real. We can't get rid of it. We're stuck in it, full and complete. So it's within this dualistic, phenomenal reality that the whole Vedantic teaching takes place. Even the idea that there are Upanishads 600 BC, the whole thing is not the real truth. There are no scriptures. There are no gurus. Why? The only reality is that witnessing consciousness in you. That's all that ever was. That's all that there is now. That's all that there will be. So we should never mix up the relative and the absolutes. Most people that talk about Vedanta, there's a very subtle mixing up of these, and they may think that I really was ignorant. I really now know myself, and because of that I've become free. If a person were to think like that, they wouldn't have known the absolute truth. I'll just quote one verse from a great Vedantin, Shankaracharya's great guru. His name was Gaudapada Acharya, and he has a verse that goes like this. Na utpattihi na nirodha, na bada na sadhaka, na mamukshu na muktaha, iti paramartha. In English, there is no creation, there is no destruction, there is nobody bound, there's nobody practicing spiritual discipline, there's nobody who desires liberation, and there's nobody liberated. This is the highest truth. Esha Paramartha. This is Vedanta. That's the absolute. The fourth critical point is to understand the difference between doing something and knowing something. In Sanskrit, this is called Kartru Tantra and Vastu Tantra. And let me, to the translations of those, Tantra means dependent on Kartru, a doer. Kartu Tantra, an action that's dependent on me. I do the action. Anything like that is called Kartu Tantra, dependent on an agent. And then the other is called Vastu Tantra, not dependent on the agent, dependent on the thing to be known. Let me see if I can explain exactly what is involved here. Everybody in their ignorance takes themselves to be a doer. Because I'm this body. So I'm doing so many things. I'm digesting my food, I'm talking to my friends, I'm going to the shopping. So I'm a doer. So now I want to become free. What do I have to do to become free? Tell me what I should do. Because then I could decide if I want to do it, I'll do it. And if you tell me what to do and I decide, nah, I don't want to do it, I'm not doing that. Or maybe I can think of something, I'll do it some other way. For example, if you say, go to the store by foot, I can do it. Or I can say, no, I'm not going to do it. Or I'm going by bicycle. I can do it some other way. It's up to me, the doer. That's called Kartu Tantra. Vastu Tantra means fire is hot. Fire is hot. Is that up to me? Can I do it, not do it, or do it some other way? Because it's not up to me. It's a fact. So knowledge, what knowledge? Fire is hot. That's correct knowledge. Suppose somebody said, no, fire is not hot, fire is cold. That's called incorrect knowledge. Because the fact is the fact. Whatever it is not up to us. So, anything that I do, which is dependent on a doer, which is dependent on ignorance, because I can't become a doer unless I've already mixed up my true self with what I'm not. So whatever I do will never put an end to the ignorance. Does that mean there's nothing to do in Vedanta? Many teachers, it seems, are saying there's nothing to do. You're already that. No effort. Don't make any effort. Any effort you make will be a movement away from that. You're already that. Don't do anything. We couldn't hear certain teachings like this. But in Vedanta, it's not like that. It is true that no activity on your part will ever remove your ignorance, because every activity is stemming from the idea that I'm this body. But doing things can produce an effect that is very important in Vedanta. That's called spiritual sadhanas. That we can do, not do, or anyways. So what's the purpose of spiritual sadhanas? Sadhana means a practice. What is a practice? What's the real sadhana? What is it that I have to do? So I have a mind that's naturally extrovert. What we have to do is take the mind that's naturally extrovert and use the faculty of the mind, the capacity of the mind that allows it to become introvert and turn back. All of the effort is only in that, because the self is never hidden. It's only because the mind wants to go out. Its natural proclivity is that way. All of its interests are out there. My children, my house, my life, everything is out. But Vedanta says if you want to realize this truth, that extrovert mind is not the instrument. So all sadhanas are to make the mind fit enough, subtle enough, introvert enough, so when the teacher says, you are that, it won't not only make perfect sense, it'll be like the berry on the palm of your hand. It'll be so obvious. There's nothing so close, so near than your own self. It was always there. But we don't get to know it. So all the doing is merely to make the mind the fit instrument. And we can talk about that in one of the other concepts. What is it actually I have to do? But we should be perfectly clear that no matter what I do, it'll never put an end to the ignorance. It's only this Vedantic teaching to the right student, the qualified student, who has actually made himself fit enough. So when he hears this teaching, it's not just merely an intellectual concept that he can repeat and write books and give lectures on, but it's sunk deep into his own experience, his anubhava, deep into his... It's kind of like the difference between reading a menu and eating the meal. You know about it, you can intellectually, but to actually experience it, there's requirements. It's not for every Tom, Dick, and Harry. People can hear this, think they understand it. It doesn't do anything because they're not qualified. They won't be able to understand 3 words. You are that. 3 words. Nobody can understand it except the one who's qualified. All activities, Kartu Tantra, are merely to make ourselves the one who can hear that and get a benefit from it. But the knowledge is not dependent on any activity. When the teacher says, you are that, those very words make us aware of a fact that's not up to us. Like the fire is hot. We recognize a fact. This is not, you will become that in heaven. Well, if that's a fact, I can't know that now. I have to just take it on faith. But Vedanta is not an article of faith because you don't have to go to heaven to verify it. It's a fact right now. It's a bhuta vastu. It's a thing actually existing right here and now. We can all see it. If we can get our minds qualified to actually be the instrument that can understand these three words. Because when I understand I am that ignorance, what's ignorance? I am this, will come to an end. And all the suffering that came from that wrong idea will cease simultaneously with the removal of that ignorance. That's called moksha, liberation, nothing more. The witness is always liberated. As soon as the ignorance is gone, I realize my eternally liberated nature. The ignorance didn't bind me, the knowledge didn't free me, but because of my wrong idea, I was in this situation. Once I'm in this ignorance, anything I do will never remove that ignorance. Brief story. The story of the 10th man. You may have heard of it. It's a traditional story. I'll try to tell it quickly here. A guru sends 10 disciples to a temple, and they go, he says, get darshan and come back. So the 10 disciples go, and there's one head disciple. When on their way back, they come to a river, and there's a boatman there. They meet the boatman, and the boatman asks them, how are you doing? Oh, fantastic. We just went to this beautiful temple. We had darshan. It's perfect. We're returning to our guru. He says, wonderful. Have a nice journey. So the head monk looks at the other 9 monks and says, does everybody know how to swim? And they all say, yes, we can all swim. Okay, jump in the water. We're swimming across this river. They get to the other side, and the head monk says, I will now count. Let me count, make sure everybody got across safely. And he begins, and he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh my God, let me count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The 10th man is missing. All right, don't panic. I want 4 of you to go that way. We'll go this way. He must be somewhere. We'll find the 10th man. And they search. They begin the search. They're looking under the rocks, behind the bushes. They go far and far. They finally come back. Any luck? The 10th man is missing. What? And they start to cry and lament. Meanwhile, that boatman on the other side, he sees what's going on over there. He gets into his boat. He comes over. He goes to the head. He says, you guys were so happy on the other side. What seems to be the problem? You don't understand. I'm in charge. My guru said, go 10, bring back 10. We crossed the river. We're only 9 now. The 10th man is missing. Where should we go? Can you give us any? Where's the currents? Maybe. He looks at the guys. He says, 1 second. You say you came 10? Yes. You say you're 9 now? Yes. Don't worry. Have faith in me. I will produce the 10th man. The head monk goes, when? When I die and go to heaven? He's going to be up there? He died in the... I'm going to produce the 10th man right here, right now. Just do me one more favor. Count one more time. So the guy goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Where's the 10th man? And the boatman looks at him and says, you are the 10th man. Tattvamasi. You are that. Those words, just those words. His ignorance was gone. The 10th man was gained. He didn't now have to keep repeating, I'm the 10th man, I'm the 10th. He knew what the mistake was. He forgot to count himself. And because of that ignorance, no matter how much effort he made, how hard he looked, how much strength into the search, he could never find it. Because the very search was based on this ignorance. And he needed someone to tell him, you are that. Those words produced knowledge. It had nothing to do, it was a fact. It was like fire is hot. You are that. And those words for the student who's eliminated, he knows all of these objects, they're coming and going. I don't think they could really be me. Even this body is changing every minute. How could this really be me? There's no self here really. And the senses are likewise changing. And my mind is in continual flux. There's no self anywhere there. Where's the self? He's eliminated all of them. I'm looking for my true unchanging self. Where is it? Where should I look? And then the Guru says, stop. That self that you're looking for. You are that. It's always here. It's always present. But because of your ignorance, you've been looking out for it and you could never find it. That knowledge is not dependent on us. It's dependent on the fact of the matter. We can't do it or not do it or do it some other way. Either it's a fact and we know it, or it's a fact and we don't know it. Everyone is in this ignorance of not knowing it. This is a big subject because all of the spiritual sadhanas which are dependent on us, starting from something called karma yoga, you may have heard of it, doing our actions in a particular way, meditation, getting on a good diet, sattvic foods, attending satsang, studying the scriptures. All of these things are dependent on us, and they're absolutely necessary to make us fit enough to understand the three words, you are that. That's the difference between knowledge and doing. Kartu Tantra, Vastu Tantra. There's many important implications in this understanding that we won't go into in this particular talk, but this distinction, without understanding the difference between knowing and doing, you'll have missed an important concept in Advaita Vedanta. And the final and most perhaps important point to recognize, not as important as the first concept, but to understand, how do the Upanishads teach this thing? The self has no qualities. It's nirguna, so no word can describe it. The self cannot be conceived because whatever you conceive of can't be that. You must conceive of something, and every conception is not the self, because it's the witness of all conceptions that can never be conceived of. The Upanishads describe it like this: that which can't be known by the mind, but that by which the mind itself is said to be known. Know that to be Atman, and not what they meditate on as this. You can never know it because it's the eternal subject. In fact, it doesn't have to be known as an object because it's self-lit, self-revealed, self-evident. The only thing obscuring it is our ignorance. So the fifth and most important understanding of how the Upanishads actually work. What is the method of Vedanta? How does the teacher teach the student this truth? Since no words and concepts, it seems as though there could be no teaching about this. The teacher would just have to sit there in silence. And in fact, some teachers do. And in a certain way, that's the highest teaching. because that silence is the nature of the self. There's a story in the Upanishads where the student comes to the guru and says, "Teach me the highest truth, go Guru." And the guru sat there quiet. He says, "Swamiji, I've come so far. Please teach me the truth." The guru sat there silent. One more time he beseeched the guru, "I implore you, I'm a dedicated person. Can't you say something? Teach me the truth." And after the third time of silence, the guru finally spoke. He said, "My dear disciple, I've been teaching you the truth. There's no higher teaching than silence. That is the nature of truth. The self is silence. What could I say? Anything I said would be not the nature of the self." And the student understood what that teaching is. But for most of us, if we go to a guru, he sits silent, we ask for our money back. Because what good will that do us? So what is the method of Vedanta? They don't just sit silent. What they do is, in order to teach this truth, they deliberately say certain things that are not absolutely true, in order to remove more gross ideas, and then in the end, those very concepts and ideas that were taught, neti, neti, not this, not this, other than the total negation of every single thing, existence, empirical non-existence, there is no other direct way to point it. So in this tradition, there's a great sage, his name was Dravidacharya, and he has a famous saying that goes like this: Adiyaropa apavadabhyam nishprapancham prapanchite. That reality which is devoid of all multiplicity is taught by the method of deliberate superimposition, and then in the end, whatever was said as a means, even those means get negated. When everything is negated, nothing needs to be done to reveal the self, because the self is always shining. It's always there. There's no other way. This is the only way. In the end, whatever was said, it's not because we said the absolute. There's no teaching, there's no taught. So all of this, so let me give you one example. Remember in the beginning I said the true self is the witness and the ego is the witnessed. That's not the absolute truth. Because if there was a witness and a witnessed, duality would be true. So really, as you study this teaching, you first have to understand the witness never changes. It's real. The witnessed is appearing and disappearing. It can't be real. So there's only one reality, the witness. But if there's only one reality, how could it be a witness? It's just pure consciousness. Even the idea that it was a witness was superimposed on the self for the purpose of teaching, because we think there's an ego. We think there's a world. We think there's time and space. So Vedanta says you're the witness of all of it. But when we realize the witness never was, it isn't even when it's appearing, and it never will be, then the idea that the self is a witness is also rescinded. That's the method of Vedanta. One more example. In the beginning, you go to the teacher and you say, I'm suffering, I want to be free, I want to be happy. And the guru says, it's because of your ignorance. You've made a mistake about yourself. You have to get rid of that. You have to know your true self. All of that is not true. Because you are that. You're not ignorant. But for the purpose of teaching, this teacher comes down to our level and says certain things merely as a device. But in the end, if he were to not negate that, if you were to think, I really was ignorant, I really got rid of my ignorance, now I know the truth, and now I'm liberated, you didn't get the apavada, the negation part. Nobody was liberated. That was just because you thought you were bound. We said, here's how to get liberated. But when the ignorance is gone, we'll have realized, I have no ignorance. I didn't need any guru. I don't have a mind that needed to be purified. All of that was in the realm of ignorance. So in the end, it has to be negated. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Tat geyam aham pravakshami yat yatva amritam asnute anadimat param brahma nasat uchite. Hey Arjuna, I'm now going to tell you that thing knowing which you will attain immortality. It's that infinite Brahman, which is not sat, existence, nasat. Oh, it must be non-existent. Nasat. That's the only way to teach it. That Brahman, which is not this, that's Vedanta. There's no other way to teach it. But in the beginning, for the purpose of teaching, certain assumptions. Another example. In Advaita Vedanta, there are no three states. If there were really three states and you were the witness, it would be Dvaita Vedanta, dualistic Vedanta. But everybody thinks they're having three states. Based on that, we say, you're the witness of the waking. You're the witness of the dream, and you're the witness of the absence of both. But when we realize that both waking and dream are not real, they cancel each other. They appear and disappear. So when they go, we call that sleep. When there's no waking or dream, what's the meaning of sleep? Sleep is reality. So even the three states was merely for the purpose of teaching. Teaching what? That there's no states, there's only the self. What you took as the waking is Atman. What you think is dream is Atman. What you think is the absence of both of those, you call it sleep? That's Atman. There's only Atman. But in the beginning, we said that there are three states. Some people may have heard of the teaching of the 5 sheaths, the Panchakoshas. The outer sheath, the more subtle, until that real self was the very basis of the sheaths. Obviously, if there were really 5 sheaths, Advaita is not true. I could go on with many examples. All of these examples come under the one umbrella of this one method. And Shankara says in the Gita Bhashya, Sarva Shastra Vidapi Sampradaya Rahitam Murkaha Eva Upekshyam. Even if a person were to be learned in all the scriptures, if he doesn't know this traditional method of teaching, he should be disregarded as though he were an ignoramus. This method, if he were to think, I really had ignorance, I really got rid of it, now I've woken up, he should be disregarded as though he were a fool because he doesn't understand the method of Vedanta. Nobody woke up. The self's always awake. The non-self never existed. Who woke up? These are the 5 fundamental concepts. The self, Atman, ignorance, avidya, the absolute point of view and the relative point of view. What is dependent on the agent and what is dependent on knowledge. And what is the method of Vedanta? deliberate superimposition for the purpose of teaching, and in the end, the total negation of everything that was said previously. These are the 5 concepts. With these tools, you'll be able to begin your study of Advaita Vedanta. I wish you all the best. Hari Om.